All right, everybody, we're getting to about that time here, so let's go ahead and get started. First off, thank you for coming to another one of our webinars here. As a reminder, we are going to be doing these how-to webinars and the quarterly update webinars on the first Thursday of every month. So you guys can always expect those. You can always head over to smartservice.com/webinar to register for these. Of course, definitely something I'll make sure to say at the end of this as well. The other thing I want to say before we get started here is on the right-hand side of your screens, usually the right-hand side, you guys should see a little webinar panel there. And in that panel, you have an option for a question tab. We'll be answering those questions live over the air during this class from beginning to end. So if you have anything come up, you got a question you want to ask, definitely make sure to ask us here and we'll go ahead and get to you. But let's go and take a look at what we got here for today. So this month's webinar is going to be on effective reporting practices with SmartService. Once again, my name is Nori Neinkirchen. I am the Customer Support Manager for SmartService, and I'm joined with our two implementation specialists, Jess Spalding.
Hey, guys.
And Jacob Blair.
Hello, everybody.
So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into what we're looking at today. All right, so effective reporting and features you may have missed. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take an introduction into reporting. I want to talk a little bit about, well, what reports do I run where? What's the difference? You have SmartService on one side, you have QuickBooks on the other side. Where should I run what kind of report? What are the responsibilities and duties of each program? Where should you expect them to meet? Where are you going to only be able to run a report on one side or the other? So we'll talk a little bit about that and the differences there. And then I'll go ahead and take you through navigating the reporting screen in SmartService, just how to get started. Where do I find that? Are there any permissions? And a couple other little things along the way. Once we are all set and ready to go in the reporting screen, we'll go ahead and transfer over to Jess here. He's going to talk about a couple different things with you. And most of those things are going to relate to creating your first report. So that's going to include what you can see here, things like the different types of reports. For those of you who are already familiar with reporting, you'll probably get a little bit of information from there still. We're going to be presenting a lot of stuff in this. We're also going to talk about creating a basic report just to get everybody on the same page in case you haven't created a report before. And then we're going to go ahead and switch over and talk about troubleshooting reports, memorize reports, how to duplicate and repurpose your reports. If you have a good report you'd like to use for something else or make for each employee or something like that. There's a number of different uses you can do there, really. And then we'll go ahead and talk about exporting reports to Excel for further calculations or to send off to a payroll company, if it's a report on clock in and clock out or something like that. Now, that's going to take up a good chunk of our class. However, another thing I do want to make time for today is going to be some commonly requested reports. We've been watching some support calls for the last couple months here before this webinar to come up with what are some of the most common reports that our customers are asking for. What do you guys call in and ask for a lot? So we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. We're going to be making those reports step by step. So I would encourage all of you to either, if you have two monitors, keep the webinar up on one. You can build these reports with us on the other side, or you can write some of this down. But once again, remember, you guys will have a recorded video of this up after the webinar, probably I would say either Friday or Monday. We should have that video up and ready to go for everybody to watch. So you can always just sit back and relax, learn as much as you can today, and you can go ahead and watch that video next time. All right, so let's go ahead over to our next slide here. SmartService and QuickBooks reporting. So what should I expect from SmartService reports? Well, SmartService is going to be handling the service side of your business. So that's going to be things like what we have here. The status of ongoing services, jobs that we are in the middle of doing, jobs maybe we've started, and things like that. That's going to include estimates for a lot of you as well. Of course, QuickBooks has their own estimate features, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The next thing that we're going to be talking about in SmartService reporting is going to be scheduling concerns. So things for, missed, canceled, or upcoming services. If you're using the preventative maintenance features and stuff like that in SmartService, you're probably going to want to run a report for, what maintenances do I have coming up that I need to get to next month? So we can go ahead and get those scheduled out or next week or however often you guys like to, get those tasks sent out to the technicians. Another thing that SmartService is great for is detailed service histories. And what I mean by that really is all of the jobs you guys do in SmartService, as many of you probably know, create history records in SmartService when you finish with them. So QuickBooks is the invoice, SmartService holds on to the history. So if you need to run a report to see, what was the last 5 visits, what are the notes from our techs out there, what were the times and stuff like that, what were the items, The items you can really run in either side, QuickBooks or Smart Service, but Smart Service is going to have things like their notes and some other information that is Smart Service specific, which will really help out for those kind of reports. And then we look at QuickBooks here. So QuickBooks responsibilities are a little different from Smart Service. QuickBooks is going to be looking at the financial side of your business. So let's say an example of costing. So Smart Service is due to you as far as job costing. For those of you who have seen our job costing webinars before, Smart Service's idea is we're going to gather that information from the field, like your times and what items you used and all that stuff, and I'm going to send that over to QuickBooks. Now, QuickBooks being the financial side is going to compile all that data and be able to give you that information as far as costing. So if you have a contract or we just want to see how we did on that install last, you're going to want to run those reports in QuickBooks to get the full picture. Smart Service does allow for some costing for sure. That's definitely something we've been improving on, especially recently with adding some new fields and stuff like that. However, our goal isn't to replace QuickBooks, remember, it's to work together with QuickBooks. So for things like your job costing, aging, profit and loss reports and stuff like that, more accounting-based things, anything dealing with money really, you're going to be running those kind of things over in QuickBooks. All right, so that gets us through the responsibility section here of what is going to be going where. Let's go ahead and head over to Smart Service real quick. I'll bring you guys over to my other screen so we can take a look at that. All right, so we made it into Smart Service here, and well, how do I access that reporting information? The first thing I want you guys to know here is in your employee profile, if we open up any of these guys, under this Permissions tab, you do have the ability to disable access to reporting. Now, a lot of people get this little box confused here, so I want to make sure this is clear. If you want to access reporting, you do not want to check the box. This is a disable, not an enable access. So we're logged in as my user currently. The reason I can access the reporting tab is because this box is not checked. Now, why is that box in there? Well, the reason that we added that box in there is because usually it's going to be top-level admins that are running these reports for the most part. It really depends on company and, how many different hats you're wearing and stuff like that. But I probably don't want my dispatcher running a report for, how much money did we make last month and stuff like that, to see, how much revenue came in. We might disable reporting for some folks and leave this just for the people that need to see that kind of data. But the options here, if you ever need to disable reporting for somebody to only let certain people in there, totally fine. This permission is not checked by default, so it is something you opt out of. All right, so how do I get to reporting? Well, it's one of the big old buttons right here. So we can head up here to this little stack of paper, click on that option. And that's going to open up our reporting tab. Now, inside our reporting tab here, and these will be things that Jess and Jacob will go ahead and express for you again here when they get to their sections of the webinar today. But you have a couple different things. So let's start with categories. Categories are the different kinds of reports that you guys can run in Smart Service. The categories we have displayed here are about maybe a fifth of the categories that you can actually use in Smart Service. There are some demo reports that come with the program. Things that, we said, well, when we made the program, I think everybody's going to need these. So, of course, you already have those pre-made for you. If you click on something like customers, for example, it's going to populate with, some of those detailed reports. For example, we want to see customers in detail by service city. Well, I don't think there's anybody in this crowd that wouldn't use that. So it's built into the program. However, we're going to talk too later today, and of course, being the main topic of today, about this new report button up here. If you can't find a report down here that works for you, we're going to go ahead and create a new report, and we can make our own report. So you're not limited to what you guys see within these drop downs here. And that's why I said the categories are about a fifth of what's possible. Those are just the most frequent ones that we found when building the program. But you guys have kind of full reign to go in here and create whatever you like, something that Jess is going to cover with you here. Before I do hand it over to Jess, though, there's a couple extra things I want to talk about in this window. So we talked about the different categories. We talked about how it loads in the reports. Let me familiarize you guys with a couple of these different symbols that we have here. So on every single report, we've got the same options. You've got a preview button. That's going to open up that report. So hitting that button just makes that report show up for me. Pretty easy. To close out of a report, you got to be careful with this one now. There's a big X that everybody hits, and that closes down Smart Service. You don't want to do that. Hit the little X down here. That's just going to close that tab, and you can see if I hover over it, it'll say close that report. So let's go ahead and close that. You got a print button. Now I'm not going to hit that one because I don't want to print that out. But if you have a default printer selected on your computer, it's going to use that printer and that printer's preferences. You have a customized report option here, this little pencil and triangle that we got. Now, by hitting that button, that's going to let you decide what information, what fields should be on that report. So you can open it up. This is the window Jess is going to go through with you guys when we get to that section here. But you see it lists out all the different columns that are in the report and how they're organized and the name of the report and all that stuff. And then lastly, you guys have a filter option. Now that filter is just about the most important one to me. That filter basically, like as this report is right now, runs for every customer in detail by class, every single one that I have. What if I wanted to only see customers that are part of a certain class, or if it was, customers in a certain city or something like that? Well, then I'd come in here and I'd have a filter that will block information from the report. It's going to narrow us down a little bit. So I could say, we want to do only customers in this city or that city. That's when we're going to talk about these filter options in here as far as what should be omitted from the report, or better yet, what should it focus on. The last option that we have in this window, at least for the moment here, is going to be the delete button. You can go ahead and remove these reports here. So I can hit, do you want to delete? You can get rid of that. You can always hit the load standard reports to bring those back if you accidentally delete those. There's a couple of things that the help desk can do to get those reports back as well. But that's pretty much the basics of the reporting window, guys. So miss anything in there? Everything look good?
Everything looks good.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jess, and we'll get started with, well, how do we make one of these of our own?
All right, guys. So we're going to be hitting on a lot of the topics that Nori was bringing up there during his little section. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new report inside of Smart Service here. So I'm going to go ahead and select our new report button up here in the top left-hand corner of the report screen. And that's going to bring up the view that Nori had shown you guys that had all this information already filled out. But we're going to go through this so that we can kind of get an idea of what kind of information we want to put into here, what kind of report we're actually going to run. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a name for our report. So what we're going to do is this is going to be a weekly schedule summary, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and name that. So what we're going to do with this is it's going to pick up all of the jobs that we have scheduled out for our filter, which is going to be this week. So the next thing that we want to take a look at here is going to be the type of report we're using. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we're picking the type of report that we want to pull information for. So as you can see in our type dropdown, we have some of those options that are listed as a category on the left-hand side of the screen for us. So these are going to be all of the additional ones that Nori was mentioning during his segment. So since we're going to be doing a scheduling report, we want to make sure that we select our scheduling option out of this list. So we'll go ahead and select that. And I'll kind of explain once we get down into our report fields what that's going to do for us here. So before we move on, we want to make sure that we have some kind of description in here. So if somebody who typically doesn't run these reports is going to be running it for this week, they'll know what kind of report they're actually running here. So we're going to do something like weekly schedule summary by technician. So that's just going to give them a kind of a broad overview for what the description of this report's going to be. And we'll go ahead and jump over top of this next little section for a moment. That's something that Jacob's going to actually cover with you guys. So the next thing we want to take a look at here are going to be our report fields. We need to know what kind of information we're going to have on the report before we can go through and group that information based on the criteria we want, or sort things by the criteria we want. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this field name dropdown in our report field. So the first column in the very bottom section. So if we open that up, we have access to all of the different kinds of fields that are going to be available for a scheduling type report. So if we just kind of scroll down through here just a little bit, you'll be able to see kind of a broad overview of the things that we'll be using for this report. We can pull in customer information. We can pull in all kinds of different information that would actually come from QuickBooks. So down through here, you'll see that there are some different sections where we can have different information about our job statuses and all the different little pieces of information that are going to make these reports useful for you. With all that being said, you guys may come across something where you're trying to create a report and you're not quite sure, what's going on because it doesn't seem like it's selecting the right fields when we look in our field name dropdown. So to kind of give you an idea here of what some of those other reports might have in them, we'll go ahead and change this type for just a moment. And we're going to go ahead and change this to an audit report. So we're going to look at the audit log from Smart Service. So we'll know pretty much right away that this is probably not the list of information we want to pull from. So if we take a look in our report field again, we can see that all of those values in that list have changed on us. So these values are going to be specific to an audit log report. So we'll go ahead and switch that back over to our scheduling type, and we'll start filling out those fields. So what we want to do here first is probably get, some customer information. So we'll do the customer's name. We'll go ahead and do a job name so that you can see, in the list what jobs these dates are corresponding to.
And I think it's important to reference here, guys. So you notice that you can either select from the dropdown or you can type into the dropdown as Jess is doing. Jess, go ahead and click one of those dropdowns.
All right.
So if you picked an item that's in the dropdown, you know your reports pretty well, you can just go ahead and type things in there. It'll automatically select whatever the next alphabetical thing is in the list, but you can always type something in, expand the list, see if it's in there, see if there's something around there. But I just wanted to point that out. That's how Jess is doing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Nori. So again, we've added our job name in here. So we'll be able to see the customer's name and the number of that job based on the formatting we use for creating our job names in here. We're also going to go ahead and use the job type so that we can kind of take a look to see what kind of jobs are scheduled out for this week. And as you probably noticed there, I didn't move my mouse. You can tab through these fields as well, so you don't have to, constantly be holding onto your mouse to try to move around in here. If you want to try to enter some things in quickly, just go ahead and tab through these fields. They're going to go in, basically in the order that you're seeing there. But we also need to get some of the information from the scheduling portion of this. So we'll go ahead and add in the scheduled employee, and it's going to go ahead and auto-populate here. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit tab to automatically complete that. And then we also want to get the scheduled date. So you can see here, it's still trying to give us the scheduled employee. So you kind of need to keep typing or select it out of the dropdown as Nori had mentioned. So you just need to select out of the dropdown like such. And then we also want to get, when is the job list, what time are those jobs going to be starting on those days? So we'll go ahead and select the scheduled start time. That way we can see that kind of information. And we kind of want to know maybe where these jobs are going to be happening at. So we'll also add in the service city. So we know that our technicians are going to be going to certain areas out there. So now that we have some information in our report fields, we can go back up and kind of go through what we want to group everything by, what we want to sort by. So in terms of a schedule report, we probably want to make sure that all of our technicians are grouped in with themselves. So if we have Bob out there on that list and we have Billy on the list, we don't want those jobs to be all mixed up between their usernames there. So we're going to go ahead and apply a group on our scheduled employee. And it works exactly the same up here as it does in the bottom section, where you can start typing and then it will pull up the next option in the list for us, or you can use the drop down to select out of there. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave that as our only grouping. So tabbing from here is going to set us up in our report sorting section. So I'm actually going to add in two different kinds of sorts here so that we can sort by the scheduled date. And then we also want to sort by the scheduled start time. That way, inside of the grouping for those employees, the times are going to be chronologically listed. And then from here, if you need to change how this is going to be displayed, you can select, ascending or descending order based on the date or start time. If you have something in here that is not like a numerical value, you will be able to do this as well. So if you put the customer name in here, for example, you can sort it either A to Z or Z to A.
And remember, guys, just to make the distinction there between the two fields, grouping is going to put like items together. So if everybody was in, let's say, Lewis Center, if we grouped it by that, by service city, it would put all the Lewis Center people in their own chunk, then all the Columbus people in another chunk under that. It's just going to kind of chunk out that report for us. The sorting is going to be A to Z alphabetical order, like Jess was saying, with the customer names and stuff like that, or in this instance, the date. So remember that that way, grouping puts like items together, sorting is going to be A to Z.
Thank you for that, Nori. So now that we have all of our grouping and sorting set up, we may want to come down here and kind of tailor this, the report fields, so that they kind of make more sense to us. So the next column that we have here is going to be for our alias. So an alias lets you essentially rename the field as it's going to be displayed on your report. So instead of using, scheduled employee, we'll just go ahead and label this technicians. And then from there, I don't think we really need to worry too much about the rest of the aliases for these. This is going to be, pretty plain and simple information that we're looking at. So we'll go ahead and move on down to our formatting section. So with formatting, you have the ability to apply different kinds of formats to your text. So some of these are going to be very specific. So if we have something like a job amount in here, we would want to select that currency option. You can also select things like, if you have a set of dates inside of the section that you're looking at there, you can also define that as well. So for the dates, we're going to go ahead and select a date. And then for our time, we're going to go ahead and select time, so that these are properly formatted for us on that report. And then the last section here that we have in the report fields is going to be our totaling information. So if we take a look at this, we have quite a few different options in here. So, if we had an amount column in here, we would be able to sum that all up at the end of that group, essentially. So we would see all of the amounts from Bob's columns of jobs in there totaled up into a single field for us. You can also use a count if you would like. So the count is essentially going to give you just a count of the number of items that are listed in the section or group that we're looking at. So what I want to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and select that count so that we do get a count of all of the customers that we are actually working for out there in the field. And then below all of that, Smart Service gives you a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be looking at on that report. So you can kind of see the information is flowing in from all of our jobs and things like that and populating that section. So the next thing that we want to take a look at here is what's this going to look like, when we open up the report as Nori had done in his section. So we're going to want to make sure that we hit the Save and Close button in the top right-hand corner. And that is essentially going to memorize this report for us. So it'll work similarly to your QuickBooks Memorize reports. So we'll go ahead and hit Save there. And we notice that it didn't pop up in this list. So right now we're looking at the customer category. And the report that we just created is actually a scheduling type report. So we'll go ahead and select the scheduling category. And then if we look down here at the bottom, we'll see our weekly schedule summary. So let's go ahead and preview that real quick. So as you can see here, everything is listed out as we had requested. So we have all of our column names up here at the very top. You can see where we have renamed the scheduled employee field over to technician. And right now we have about 5 pages of information here. If we go to the second page, we'll see that we have our little count here. That way you can kind of see, Lucas has 27 jobs scheduled for him this week, essentially. So we'll go back. We definitely want to apply a filter to this because, as you can see, we have information from back in February in here. So those jobs would have been jobs that haven't been posted yet in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and hit our little tiny X just below the red one to close out of that report. And now we're going to apply a filter to this so that we can look at a specific date range in this case. So we're not pulling in all of the jobs that we currently have scheduled. So if we click on the little funnel there, it's going to bring up a new window for us. And the drop down here is going to function the same way as our report fields back inside of the report design. So we'll go ahead and you can either scroll and select, or you can type in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type. So we want to make sure that we are looking for the scheduled date. And in the next column there, you have the ability to use a specific kind of operator to pick out what information you're looking for. So at the top here, we have our equals to. So if you were only looking for one date, for example, you could just go over into the next column and put in that date. And if you had something like a line item report or something, you'd be able to see what items are, greater than this value or less than this value with the next two operators. And then the ones following that are going to be similar. However, they are going to essentially look for the greater than or less than or equal to options. And then the double pointed brackets here, those are going to essentially be things that you want to exclude from this report. So if you select this operator and you excluded a certain date, for example, that date would not show up on our report. And then below all of the basic operators, you have quite a few other options here. So just to kind of go over some of these, if you needed to look at a specific date range, you would be able to use your between option here. So then you would be able to select, April 1st through April 5th, for example. And then you also have the ability to, if you need to, find any kind of fields that are blank, for example. So say you're going in and you're doing some data cleanup and you want to make sure that you guys have all the fields that you need filled in. You can select this operator and it'll show you all of the records that have a blank value, for example, the schedule date. And then if we kind of keep going on down here, we have some predefined date ranges. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and select this week, but you do have the ability to kind of go all over the place in time here. So you can do last week, next week, you can do several different month options. If you wanted to look at a quarter, you could do that here, or you can look at a year, or one of the next 7 days or 14-day options here. But as I said, we're going to go ahead and select this week for this report. And remember, when we previewed this originally, it was a 5-page report. So now that we're filtering out some of the older jobs that are in the system, it should be quite a bit smaller. Yep, so it is actually only 2 pages now. So we've cut down on 3 pages of information that was falling outside of what we were looking for.
And hey, Jess, I'd like to address a couple of questions at this junction here.
Sure.
So, guys, for the rest of you too, because I see some people are taking advantage of it, which is awesome. Remember, on the right-hand side of your screen, you have a little question window. You can definitely ask us questions while we're going through here. But let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of things we got here. So Jody asks, is there any way for the columns to maybe not wrap, maybe make those a little bit wider, kind of like how we have our job name category here, and it seems to kind of bunch up the other information. Chris is asking a similar question too, because the information's bunched up. That is something that we are going to cover a little bit later here, guys, as far as how to export this data to Excel. Jess, could you go ahead and show them where that button is real quick, though?
Yeah.
Some of the options they have there.
So if you come up to the top left-hand corner, you have the ability to print preview. If we select that, we have all the different options in here. So you can print, you can modify your page layout, the size of the paper you're using, and things like that. But if we look over here on the right-hand side, we have several different export options. So as Noria had mentioned, we do have the ability to export it out to Excel. It's going to create an Excel file for us where we can go in and do any kind of manipulation of the report that we had in Smart Service. And to kind of expand on this a little bit, we do have another way of handling, the text wrap issue you guys are seeing. So say you were looking for potentially using the notes field in here, for example. I'm going to go ahead and close out of our print preview, and I'm going to go back into our design view real quick. And then I'll just change out one of our fields here. essentially by adding a memo field. So up here in the top section, we have the ability to select a memo field. And to give you guys a little bit of an explanation of this, it works almost exactly the same as one of our regular report fields. However, you only get one of these per report. It's going to let you select the same kind of information here that you would have in your regular report fields. But this one is going to essentially put that information along the bottom of each row. So let's go ahead and see if we can add something in here like the job name, so that you can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like compared to having it in a column. So I'll go ahead and save and close this again. And I'm just going to print preview this time. So if you kind of look here, so we have our main line. I'm kind of hovering over that right now. So that's got all of the information that we were looking for in our fields, so our report fields. And then just below that, you have that memo field. So it does kind of spread it out for you a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to read. So this is going to be useful for, job item descriptions, any kind of notes that you may need to pull onto a report, or anything that has, a rather large text amount in it. So it's definitely something you guys can do for sure. And then do we have any other questions there before we pass along to Jacob over here?
I think we're doing all right so far. I did answer one quick question. I should announce to everybody though too. Hey guys, remember the different kinds of reports, the different types of reports you run are the different types of information you want to see. One of our users had asked us a question earlier about, well, can I make a report that displays all jobs that were posted over to QuickBooks, a history report or something like that? Yes, you can. You want to head over into your smart service here and you want to make a history type report. And I'm going to pull up one here. I think I already have one. Hey, look at that. See this? Who posted this job? So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. That way the user, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. We can go ahead and discuss this one a little bit. So really, here's what you need on that report. It's a very simple report. You need a name, of course. You want a history report. You can do that job name or the job amount or whatever you'd like. You're going to need that completed date for when. And most importantly, you need this posted by field. So that posted by is going to let you know who did it. That way you guys can see, when this job was made, a history record and that kind of stuff, and run reports on the other things here. As you see, there are a number of different things for history records that you guys could create on there. Some of which are going to be, costing information and stuff like that. So definitely feel free, go in there and make your own history report just like that. The big key to your process there is going to be that posted by field and then that completed date. But alrighty, guys, let me go ahead and check through our questions here. 1 second. So, Jacob, I got some questions here you can answer.
Okay.
Is there a limit to how many of these reports I create? Is there any cost associated with creating a certain amount of reports or anything here?
No, unlimited as far as I know.
Absolutely. So you guys can create as many reports as you would like. They're definitely good for monitoring your business as well. You want to see, how much money we're making from these things, what's coming in, what's going out of this company. You're going to want to know that information just like you want financial stuff from QuickBooks. You should be just as concerned with the service side of the business here. All right, let me see here. Alrighty. I'm going to go ahead and filter through a couple more questions here. Jacob, go ahead and start off with your section, and we can always circle back.
All right, so just quick, I'm going to be expanding on a couple of different points there that Jess had. So if we go ahead and we open back up Jess's report here, specifically the one that's underneath scheduling, weekly schedule summary. Once we click onto that here, as you can see here, we do have all the fields presently filled in. Now, what if I needed more fields? What if I need to display more information here? Well, I can extend these fields here one of two ways. Over here where you see this little portrait icon, this will allow me to change the page layout from a portrait to landscape. That will extend it out a couple of different new fields. If I need anything past that, you do have the option right next to this where it does have the letter here. You can switch it over to legal sized page. That will also give you a couple of more fields here as well. So as you can see here, I definitely have a lot more fields that I'm able to list out specifically inside of my report here. Go ahead. Right next to that though, I do have this option right here where it says view totals only. Now with view totals only, it's very similar to this counting that he had set up on the previous report. With view totals only, it will just show you how many that you have inside of this report. It will not show you any of the field names. It will just show you simply how many overall customers or how many overall jobs do we have that are scheduled out for this week. As opposed to listing out these specifics, it's just going to show you the rough amount of information. From there, if I like the way that this report was set up, but maybe I want to run a report, based off of the monthly schedule summary, and I don't want to go through creating and setting up all the report fields and the grouping and the sorting again, maybe I just want to change or appendage one of the filters, I have the option right next to the report name here. This icon right here will allow me to duplicate this report. So it'll allow me to create a new report, exporting all of the same information into a new report. I just have to change the name. So I could make one that's called monthly schedule summary or maybe yearly schedule summary, and then apply a different filter to that report. Again, not having to copy and over a lot of different information, I'm able to just create, and duplicate a report that way. From there though, as you can see here, everything looks pretty well off. So if I save and close and preview this report, again, all of the same information that I have listed here is the same information that we had run with Jess. However, let's say on this report specifically, and a lot of times this may or may not happen, let's open up this report without any of the filters. And as you can see here, there's a couple of different fields that we're seeing right now that are presently empty. And the reason why these fields are empty is if we were to open up one of these jobs here, we would see that the job type is specifically empty for this particular job. More likely than not, the reason why any fields are empty is because the information that it's pulling from, so these jobs that it's pulling from, do not have the specified information right here. From there though, let's say I wanted to change up this report. Maybe I wanted to change this report type from a scheduling report to a customer report or something like that. I still wanted to gather the same information, but I switched over the reporting type. Well, when I go to do that, save and close out of here, go over to my customer reports, and try to run the same report. As you can see here, I'm going to have a couple of different issues. And the reason why I'm seeing these issues is because it is asking me for something that does not exist underneath the customer record. So with these reports, any of those fields that you see listed there, they're pulling in information from a certain record inside of Smart Service. So when you run a customer report, it's trying to run report information off of the customer. Well, customers don't have any job names associated with them. They do have jobs, but they do not have a job name associated, which is why it is asking me for this information right here. But from there, if I go ahead and I get this report back over to our scheduling report, it will work the same way as it is intended. But let's say I wanted to apply a couple of different filters to this report. We did just set up the scheduled date for this week, but maybe I wanted to set up another filter here. Maybe, scheduled date for this month as well. Well, if you were to apply a double filter there, more than likely you are not going to be able to see any of this information here. And the reason why is because this is going to be a mismatch filter. Since we've already applied scheduled date and we apply it again, none of the information that we would want to see is going to be applied because we have effectively, duplicated the scheduling information here. So as you can see, you could have a couple of different mismatches here too. Now from here, if I did want to export this report to Excel, like Jess was mentioning earlier, all I would have to do is preview this report. Once I click on that here, up in the top left-hand corner, I have the option to print preview. When I do so, as you can see here, I have a couple of different options. I could export this report into a Word file, a text file, PDF, or Excel. The main intention of putting this report into an Excel file is that you are able to expand the columns here. You can also manipulate the data a little bit further. So if this report was displaying financial information or it had any numeric values on it, you'd be able to manipulate that data. However, when you do export reports from Smart Service into Excel, it does break the sorting and the grouping. So you are just left with the raw information from the report itself.
Hey guys, quick question on that too. And Jacob, I'm sure you're going to hit each of these buttons individually. Can I email those reports from Smart Service?
Yes, absolutely. You do have the option here on the right-hand side to email this report. So you could email this report out to whoever that you're trying to get it out to.
Now, as a reminder, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, that service is supported with Outlook only, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, if you're not using Outlook, let's say you're using Google like we do here, you do have the option to export that as a PDF document and save it to your desktop or wherever. And that way you can go ahead and attach it to whatever email you'd like. As long as Outlook or whatever you have is set up as the default for your computer, though, that email button should work. These are the same options that are in your work orders. So if you're using paper work orders, you guys are probably already familiar with some of these. But remember, that email button there does require the use of Outlook. A couple questions are coming in a lot about history reports and stuff like that. I want to go ahead and address those. So you guys will want to make history reports if you're asking questions about, let's say, sales reps and commissions and jobs that were posted and stuff like that. You want to go ahead and run the history reports to get that information. I want to make a clear distinction here. I'm going to grab the mouse from these guys for just a second. So if I go to make a new kind of report here, you got a couple options. You guys can either make a job report, which is going to be for active services, ongoing services. Those of you asking about preventative maintenances, the job and the scheduling reports are going to be fairly interchangeable for a lot of that stuff. If you're talking about things that are already done, though, for example, want to get commission from a sales rep or something like that, or get an idea of that, you're probably not going to want to go with this, because here's the problem with jobs: a job can always be canceled, and we don't want to get these guys commission for something that isn't done. So for that, it's more secure to go ahead and head down here, make a history report instead. History is only things that have been posted over, only things that we know we've done. So I probably want a history report for that. Now, there are different kinds of history reports here, and I want to clarify a couple things with you. So history itself going to be a broad overview of just customer history. It's going to give you an amount and a person and a date, basically. And then you have history items down here. So history items, what that's going to do for you here is it's going to be more specific to the different line items on there. For example, I only pay commission on inventory parts. Well, then I could say, okay, let's do history items, and I could have one of my types be, let's say, let's head down there a little bit, a specific item type. So that's options you guys have. See? So if you're going to run those kind of reports, we want to run those history reports. One thing I did want to clarify too, the history commission report is a very specific usage. So this commission here, this is going to rely purely on the smart service ability to create commissions, which is done on a per job basis and something that you guys opt for. If you don't have a very complex commission structure, it's just 3% off anything you sold, or 3% off, let's say, any any inventory parts or something like that, and that's your commission. It's safer to just go ahead and just run that report for the history, because with the commission features in Smart Service, you're basically adding commission, and it gives you a default percentage and stuff, and that's something you can always give us a call and we can talk about. But it gives you a default percentage, and you won't want to use that. It'll be easier to just go ahead and run the history report, get all that stuff at the end of the month there. But let me go ahead and dive into a couple of these reports, because I do see a couple of them coming up in questions here. So let's see what we got. A couple good reports that we could run for you guys today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first couple. Let's say new customers by source. Now, when I mean source, I'm going to be talking about the marketing campaigns. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with a marketing campaign here, let's go ahead and look at a customer. One thing that I think is always very valuable, especially when you guys are running reports, is you want to look at a customer that you think should be on that report. That's going to be important to see. If the customer doesn't have that information, like this guy here, Philip, I'm not going to see him on this report if I'm running it by marketing campaign, because, well, look at that. He doesn't have a marketing campaign. If I don't fill this information out, I'm not going to be able to see that. So I'm going to put him on that. And then we're going to go ahead and generate a report here, and let's see if we can find Philip. So let's go into reports, and we're going to take Jess's lead here. We're going to hit new report. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a customer report. That should be the right type, but I want to go ahead and name this. So we'll go ahead and say new customers by source, or whatever you guys would like to call it. And we're going to go ahead and add some fields. So let's go ahead and add, let's say, customer name. Want to know who they are. That'll be important. Let's see, what else we want to add? Let's go ahead and do Service City. So where do these guys come from? Where are we working at? What cities are calling for us here? Let's say I want to get something else. Maybe if you're using customer types, what kind of customer is that? Is that a residential, commercial, municipal? We would probably want to record those kind of things. These are all things that are available in the general information page of those customers as well. Let's go ahead and say we want to look at, well, that marketing campaign we talked about. So we can go ahead and ask for that. So how did they hear about us? And then we could go ahead and run something like, let's say, creation date and time. When did they come in? So that creation date and time is a pretty important one here. You guys are going to see that a lot, and we're going to be filtering by, or sorting by that too, let's say. So let's do a sort by that. But check this out. So what that lets you do here is on any of these records that you guys might open up, let's say like Philip, you have at the bottom when you create it, the date and time of the record being created. That way I know when this guy came into the database, I know when he became a customer. It can also track who made that as well. If you're making that customer from Smart Service, this little guy here was imported from my QuickBooks company file. That's why we don't have a user there, but that's when this company file got that customer. So I'll go ahead and end that of that. And let's go back to our report. Now we did make that kind of report here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. We want to go to our customers. And there's our report. Now I could, of course, filter this out. Let's go ahead and say I want to filter to marketing campaign. And I don't want to do maybe a specific campaign. Maybe I want to do anybody who is not blank. And this answers a couple of your questions as well about history and stuff like that. If you guys are looking for something that has data in it, you want to run that not blank field. So we say, show me customers where marketing campaign is not blank. Save and close that. Go ahead and do a preview. And you can see there are my customers, the ones that have marketing campaigns in the database, and when they came in.
All right, Nori, I do have one quick question here from, I believe the name is Doriana. I apologize if I butchered that, but she's asking if she can print a report that shows missing jobs or jobs with missing invoices. So jobs that maybe did not get posted over to QuickBooks. So it would be another kind of history report. It is definitely something that we can do. We just want to make sure that we are filtering in the active status for that. So maybe Nori can kind of show us what we would want to look for in a report where we need to find out whether or not this was posted.
Sure. So important things that we want to look at here, guys. Let's go to a job report, and I don't believe we have one for that made just yet. So it looks like we're going to be making our own from scratch. Let's go to new report, and let's go ahead and say posted services. All right, Jacob, and what kind of report should I be running today here?
I believe a job report for that specifically.
Exactly.
And the reason why, guys, is because a history report is simply what is posted over from Smart Service into QuickBooks. A job report is going to be showing you anything that is still currently in the system that has not been posted over quite yet. Or maybe it was posted over in the past and we are on a current date, but this is anything that is still active inside of our system here.
Now remember, if we do want that posted by field, though, that would be a history report. So if you want to get that information, that'll work just as well. And actually, let's go ahead and let's make this a history report this time. I want to show you guys a couple extra things with that. So let's go in here and let's go to, let's say, the job name. One big thing that's going to come back here, let's go ahead and get this information. So we're going to want that completed by field. That'll be important. So who actually did the work here? I'm also going to want completed date is probably one of the most important ones, at least to me. Completed date is when we finish that service. So that's definitely important. And we're also going to want, the whole reason we came over here, that posted by field. Now, of course, you have other options in here, things you guys might do. Things that are also important, if you're running, let's say, a job report, then you guys could do this by status. The report that I'm creating here is really geared towards what has been posted. Another version of this report, let's say if we went to a different kind of thing, let's go in here and make one for, let's say, jobs. is going to be this active status here. Now, this is pretty important. What this determines is, first off, whether or not the job is active. So that's important. Any job that, let's say, if you posted it and it's done and it's not a recurring job, it's going to be inactivated. That's what hides it from your QuickBooks list, makes it show up in italics in gray. Another important thing that you guys would be seeing with that is going to be job status. So job status is going to cover, well, what was the result of that job? Is that job, for example, let's say this one here, yes, active. We're still working on that. This job here, though, yes, completed. Well, I might want to take a look at that, see what happened there. You could have other ones that are pending. You could have jobs that are canceled. This would be a great way to run reports for jobs that are canceled and things like that. So there are a couple different ways to do that report. I personally would do the history report. That way you can see what has been posted and take a look at it that way. We got any other questions for the moment, guys?
So we do have a question about a history report and whether or not it can show any jobs that have been deleted outside of Smart Service. So with that one, the history reports still do remain here inside of the system, independent of whether or not the job itself still remains. So you could run a history report to show you all of the history and reference it with any jobs. However, jobs that have been deleted out of the system would not show up on a job report now.
And that's provided they didn't also delete the history report, which hopefully nobody's doing anyway. Shouldn't be doing that. As a reminder on that one too, and not to get off topic, so I'll be quick here. For those of you who have that kind of issue, go into their profiles. Everybody should really be set to add edit permissions. That way they can't just delete those things, especially that jobs permission. If we delete information, we throw information in the trash, and that's not good for anybody in the company. So I would always recommend setting them to add edit if you're experiencing that kind of issue. That way you don't have to worry about those kind of things later on. All right, let's take a look at some other kinds of reports. One that I did promise to a customer, and I want to make sure we get to today here, is going to be, what about, let's say, open estimates? Things that, you know, the guys in the field and those of you who are using iFleet know they can create estimates out there. Well, what if, let's say, I want to follow up on those estimates? Well, how do I know which ones to follow up on? Well, that's where you can come back and get a reporting solution. So I'm going to create one more new report here. And in that report, we're going to go ahead and name this. Let's just call this Open Estimates. Now, of course, I want to select a different type of report. So let's go ahead and go with prospect job. Now, that term might not be familiar to everybody. A prospect and a prospect job is Smart Service terminology. Prospect job is basically what you guys refer to as a quote, an estimate, or whatever your custom terminology is. But if it's going to be a report on estimates or quotes or bids or proposals, you want a prospect job report for that. And I'm going to go ahead and stick a couple things on here. So let's go ahead and gather, let's say, a job's name. I want to have that on there. And I'm probably going to want to know how much the thing is worth in the first place. Now, there are a couple different fields in here. You have a job amount, which is basically before tax, and then total. So I'm going to say amount with tax. How much is that? And then we can go ahead and let's say, well, maybe I see some dollars here and I want to go ahead and give these guys a call, get their phone number on there. I might want to know, what is this for? So what kind of type is that? Okay, well, that one's for repair. That's probably going to be an easy one. We can go ahead and get that written out. Another one is, who did I schedule this estimate with? So if we didn't close the estimate, because remember the field can mark things as awarded, well, who was responsible for heading out there in the first place? Let's go ahead and take a look at the scheduled employee. So we get that one on the list. And then one last good one here, our old favorite here, the create date and time. When was that built? So we can get that on there. I don't think we need to extend that report a whole lot, but it looks pretty good. We can go ahead and put on, let's say, a sorting. Maybe we want to sort by create date and time. And we could group by a number of different things. I'm not going to group this one right now, but you could group by, let's say, you know, the type of service, or, you know, the employee that it was under, whoever you'd like. But I'd say we got a pretty good report going. Let's go ahead and save that. You see I got a new category here for prospect job. And if I run this right now, it's going to open up every estimate for all time, and that's not necessarily what I want. I want to go in here and apply some filters here. These are going to be very similar filters to what we were just talking about with the jobs being active and all that stuff. We could run, first off, let's say, estimates, are they active? Well, of course, I want to say yes. There's a couple other fields that might work a little bit better for you. So the first one I want to do is job status. What's the status of that thing? Now, you might do something like this, not equal, and then say, cancel or whatever you'd like. You can do other things like between statuses as well. So you could do a pending and an active. I like to do a pending and an active. And the reason being, pending is what iFleet is going to assign estimates to when it creates an estimate. Active is what Smart Service will assign estimates to. So you could do something like that to catch both statuses. Or if you wanted, we could just say, most of our guys are doing iFleet. Let's go ahead and change that to just equals a pending status. Another thing you might want to do here, we'll head in. We'll go ahead and say creation date and time. And we can filter that down a little bit. So I could say, this week, whatever we wanted. So estimates created this week. And last thing here I want to add in is, let's say, converted to job. Was it converted or not? Well, I want to be able to know that. So I could say converted to job equals no. So they're pending estimates from iFleet. They're created this week, and they haven't been converted over yet. Now, one thing I don't remember if we did forget to mention this or not to you guys, you can have these filters in here, and you can always clear the filters, which erases them, or you can actually untick this little box here, and that'll take that filter right off. So you guys have the option of running that here. And another thing you might notice is a lot of these things, or at least two of these things that I put on the filters, are not in the reporting fields themselves. They don't have to be. So just because you're using something as a filter doesn't mean it has to be a column in that report. But now I can run that and take a look. And, well, it looks like I haven't created any this week. Well, that's no good. Let's see what we got that's maybe a little older. I can go in here and change my filters. And we can go ahead and say create date and time this week if we wanted to, or we could go ahead and take off the job status. Now, I know I do have some made from Smart Service. We can go ahead and say active. That's another thing that Jacob talked about a little bit here, picking the right report fields. And hey, there we go. So now I can see I've got some estimates. I can see their totals. I can see all their information, and maybe I should give those guys a call here. It looks like it's been a little bit since we talked to them. But all right, guys, we got any other questions or anything else coming up here? And folks, I know we're running a little bit over, but we got some good questions and a lot of good information about reporting. Definitely get in any final questions you got here before we move on. All right. So another big one here that we got, and this is actually another good report that we should take a look at real quick, is going to be the timesheet reporting. This one confuses a lot of people, but it really shouldn't. It's pretty darn easy. So let's take a look at that before we end today. Go into new report, and let's go ahead and say we're going to do a timesheet summary. Now, there's a special kind of report in here that doesn't really work for history or jobs because it's its own little category here, timesheet. That one has elements of kind of a lot of different tables in Smart Service here, a lot of different kinds of reports. So I might run something like this, let's say. Let's go ahead and make just a quick clock in and clock out as our example. Let's get everybody's clock in and clock out for maybe this week or something like that. Now, the fields that I have in here, and I'm going to bring them up. If I type in time, you can see I have some options there that relate just to timesheet style reports. Above and below that, there's a lot of information that you'd see in like a job report, the different types of services and stuff like that. But we're going to focus mostly for this one on the different timesheet fields. So whose time is it? It's Lucas or mine or Mike's. Get that in there. Let's go ahead and say, well, what's next important? Probably the date. Let's go ahead and get that in there. It adds that date filter in there for me. What else have we got in here? Well, I might want to know what kind of thing this is. So let's do timesheet type. Was this a clock in and clock out? Is this a lunch? Is this production? Is this travel? What does this amount of time represent for us? Another couple things we could do a timesheet start. So what's the beginning timestamp? And of course, with that, we need a timesheet end. And then lastly, let's go ahead and say timesheet minutes. Now, a couple of you are going to ask, and it always happens when we talk to somebody about, oh, timesheet minutes. Why timesheet minutes? So this is something that Access, our front end of the program, doesn't really have the ability to convert these things into hours, and that's why we have buttons like that export to Excel. That way you guys are always getting your features and stuff like that. But the way that this is going to calculate is it's going to do the minutes between those two timestamps. So if you see some values that are kind of high, as a reminder, you can export to Excel and just divide that number by 1440, the number of minutes in the day. That'll give you guys an idea of how many hours is that going to represent, or send it off to your payroll company and they can take a look at it. But I'd say our report looks pretty good for now. Maybe we'll throw in a little bit of sorting and grouping real quick, get all that taken care of. Of course, I want to sort by date, and I probably want to group by my person here. So we get that information in, and we can go ahead and save and close. It's going to give us our new category timesheet report. Now, once again, if I run this now, it's just going to run for all time, and I probably don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and apply a filter here. And let's say, you know what, I don't really care about what their breakdown of the day was. I just want timesheet type to equal, let's just get that clock in and clock out time. So we can take that, preview it, and there we go. There's all of me and Lucas and Mike's clock in and clock outs. We can see all the values and the dates, so you could limit that down to run weekly like a memorized report. And then at the end of every week, you guys could come in here, very similar to what we do for our guys here actually, run a report off to see, you know, what happens and get that sent out to the payroll company. But all right, guys, I know we're getting just a little bit over time here, it looks like. Let's go ahead and wrap up a little bit. I'm going to bring you guys back over to our next screen. So there was a lot of good information in here today. Sorry we had to cut a little short there. I know we had a lot of stuff to go over, especially when it comes to reports. There's a lot of questions that are customizable to each customer and stuff like that. If you guys are feeling any struggle with those reports, though, I would definitely recommend you guys look into getting some training time with us. That's something that we can always go ahead and talk about if you give us a call at 888-518-0818. Just ask to speak with one of the trainers, or, you know, if they're in a class or something like that, you can always ask for Nori, or send us an email to support at My Service Depot. Let us know you're looking for some training. We can get you set up with the right people. But let's go over some of these other additional resources we have here. As with this webinar and all future webinars, you guys will always have one available at smartservice.com/webinar. Our marketing guy over here, Ben, is going to have that loaded up for us, hopefully by tomorrow or Monday, so you guys can definitely come here. If any of your colleagues missed this class, feel free to head over there and take a look. You're going to have a couple other things in here. You're going to have smartservice.com/updates, and that's going to cover, well, what are the latest updates in the program. If you want to see what we got coming out, definitely make sure to check that out. And of course, smartservice.com/wiki, something that, you know, just going to be our online manual, everything going on with the program, how to hit the buttons, and a bit of information about reporting there too. Once again, you guys can always give us a call, talk about some training if you want. Really, we recommend 2 hours every 2 years to keep up to date with the latest features and enhancements going into Smart Service. And of course, if you're happy with Smart Service, go ahead and leave us a review at smartservice.com/review. Love to hear what you guys think of us in the program and all that stuff. Speaking of which, when you guys leave the webinar today, you're going to be getting a brief survey here. Please do fill those out. I really do appreciate it when you guys do, because that survey at the end of this is actually what drives the topics for these. So go there, let us know how we did in this webinar. Let us know what topics you want to see covered next month, and whoever gets the highest of that topic, that's what we're going to be talking about. So definitely, guys, I got a list of ideas of my own, but I want to hear what you want to talk about the most. So let us know, and thanks for attending. We'll see you next time.